People that are like Iraqi and come in and they like start to cry. Like they eat it and they're like, this is unbelievable. Like my grandma used to make this, I haven't had this in years. Hi, I'm Zach Engel. I'm the executive chef and co-owner of Galit Restaurant in Chicago. Today we're gonna be making Iraqi Kubbeh Halab. That is a very traditional dish from Iraq. It's like a street snack, sometimes served in the home. Kubbeh are a very traditional dumpling, also known as kibbeh in other parts of the Middle East. Let's get started here. Always start with the saffron water for making your rice. I'm really just gonna dump some room temperature water in the bowl and then very gently sprinkle the saffron around and try and get it to dissolve a little bit. Really good to use a whisk. I want to try and get all those little strands submerged in the water. It does give such like a beautiful buttery floral flavor to dishes. The liquid is actually what we're using to cook the rice. We want to try and impart all the flavor from the saffron into the water. You can tell it's got a really deep orange red color, which is exactly what we want. We're going to strain the saffron out. I like to also use a spatula to push them against the sieve to kind of get all the extra juice out, especially because those threads are actually going to have the highest concentration of saffron in the water. If the color of your saffron water after you bloomed it is not this color, then it's gonna make very pale yellow rice, and you want like a golden yellow rice. For me, with saffron, I want it to kick you in the face. We cook rice in a lot of different ways. A lot of the time, we like to rinse the rice to get all the extra starches off. In this set of circumstances, because we're using the rice to make a shell, I actually want to retain all the starches on there. And so we're gonna cook it in a pot to really make sure that all the starches that cook stick to the outside of the kernels of the grains, and we can use them to help to bind our shell structure. We're using a jasmine rice because I think that jasmine has a lot of great starch in it. To keep the rice from getting stuck to the bottom, we've cut a piece of parchment paper and put it on the bottom. And that's gonna allow us to just have a steaming effect and no caramelization on the bottom of the pan. And then a good amount of salt. Finally, our saffron water. When I'm pouring it in, I'm moving it around. I'm trying to keep all of the grains mixed around and then allow the rice to get flat on the surface. And we're gonna put the lid on top. Make sure your lid seals really well. For rice, a lot of it is not just about the boiling, it's about the steaming. We're gonna put the rice in a 350-degree oven, and we'll check it after about 40 minutes. You kind of want to let rice rest for about a third to a half the time that you cooked it for, giving it the chance to absorb all of that steam and the vapor and allow all the starches to kind of settle. And you can see that all of the grains are cooked. It's perfectly flat, color's golden. And I'll take this rice and flip it out onto a large baking tray. We will gently lift the parchment, and I'll use the tines of the fork to try and separate all these grains out. And it's very gentle. They're gonna kind of do their thing because everything is so warm still. And we wanna try and break it up enough where when we go to make the shell, it's not clumpy. And if we mash it up too much, then it can just become a yellow mush ball. We're separating them, but they're still sticking together, which is really quite nice. For our next step, we're gonna make the lamb ragu. Instead of sauteing all these vegetables, I'm gonna chop them up and I'm gonna food process them. So onion, take the fennel, cut the stalks off, 1/2 the fennel, removing the root, and everything's just kind of gonna get rough chopped. Celery, throw garlic in. My little twist is I like to put a bunch of citrus zest in there, give it a little bit of florality, a little brightness. I want the whole orange in there. You can kind of see it's got an orange hue to it. All the zest has been pulverized in there. I've got this bowl with a fine mesh sieve on top, and I'm just gonna dump everything from the food processor in. You can kind of see too, there's already liquid there that we're getting rid of. And we'll just set that aside. We have ground lamb, really beautiful stuff, pink color. You can also tell there's a lot of fat in there. So that's gonna help to cook the lamb, develop a lot of flavor. We're gonna just put a little bit of canola oil in there. What I'm gonna try and do is take the lamb and spread it out somewhat evenly, and then not really agitate it too much and allow it to kind of caramelize. We have a lot of fat in there right now that's rendering off. I'll allow the fat to fill up the bottom of the pan, and now it's just kind of a waiting game. Allow the caramelization to develop. This lamb has been cooking for about 5 minutes, and as I start to flip this, you're gonna see really nice caramelization. Look at that. And then pieces that look really nice and dark I'll start to like gently mash them up with the spatula. Every little piece of meat has surface area, and we want as much of it as possible to get caramelized, because we want that texture so that inside the kubbeh, it doesn't get soggy and mushy. What we really want to see here too is a lot of the steam to go away, because that's going to be all the water that's in the ground lamb. And then we're going to get some really nice caramelization. At this point, you can go up a little bit on the heat. I'm going to step away a little bit and allow it to do its thing. I think this will probably take another 5 minutes. All right, so I'm kind of like at the very end, like scraping the bottom of this pan to get this stuff off called fond, which is like where the meat and the fat kind of stick and caramelize the pan. I'm getting this like really cool bubbling all around, which also is a good indication of like not a lot of moisture left in the meat. So we're pretty much ready to go here, because this will continue to caramelize as I add the rest of my ingredients in. We've got strained veggies, fennel, onion, garlic, citrus, celery. I'll mix this around just a little bit. I don't know, man, this smells pretty rad. Like the fennel is really perfuming, and then you get like the citrus at the end. And to help pull out any extra moisture, I usually tend to start with like seasoning with the salt. I'm like a big proponent of layering the flavors. We have kind of caramelized the vegetables, and I'm just gonna throw this raw salhanout all around. I wanna toast the spices. All those spice notes are coming through, and now I'm getting like a florality that's coming from like the rose hips and the cinnamon, and there's probably a little bit of pepper in there. Spices are more about aroma than they are about flavor. And then the final touch, harissa. We make ours in the restaurant from a mix of 3 different peppers. I add a little kick. Our lamb ragu has been going for like another 30 to 45 minutes over like medium heat, getting nice and caramelized. The finishing touch is going to be lemon juice. I want to add some acidity to it to help like even out everything else that's going on in the dish. Not a lot, maybe a half a lemon or so. A couple of tablespoons of butter. The butter, we're gonna cook it just to barely melt it and to kind of enrichen up the lamb ragu. It's gonna coat all of the pieces of lamb. And then when we cool this down, it'll help to congeal it, so we can like portion our filling out a little bit. And that color is crazy. Like this looks like burnt milk solids at the bottom of the pan when you make brown butter. But this is like texturally still very unctuous and creamy. We've got our lamb ragu cooling down in the refrigerator. Our next step is to make the rice shell. We've got yogurt, some eggs, salt. Right here is baharat spice, which is like pumpkin pie spice from the Middle East. Crack the eggs, put them into the bowl, and very like gently beat them with a whisk. I'm gonna add the yogurt in. With the yogurt, I'm like whisking it, but I don't wanna like beat the yogurt up too much. I like to just use like a very straightforward whole milk yogurt. And also, I will just say this, and I don't care, Greek yogurt sucks. I think it's gross. For this step, I like to throw in the spices so that they're like more evenly in the mixture. The real trick here is to use gloves. Like a spatula could be fine, but you don't get as much control as you do with your hands. In America, we love utensils, but like there's nothing like getting your hands into food. Be as gentle as possible and really get the feel for what you're making. Very gently fold this yogurt into the rice. It's like kneading bread. Like here's a chunk that needs to get broken up and is not coated in yogurt. So you want to pay attention to that kind of thing. You need the yogurt and the egg on every little bit of rice in order for the shell to bind. And then some rice flour, which in order to prevent it from clumping, I'm gonna sift it over the top. Mix halfway. You can get a little messy, it's okay. It's kind of part of the fun, right? You can see the rice is starting to like come together and bind. And also rice flour absorbs water at an incredible rate. You can see like the texture of this. It's holding a really nice shape. Setting this in the refrigerator, especially like overnight, it's gonna be way better to work with as a shell. For the next part, we've got the lamb ragu, which is cooled down, and we've got the rice shell, which is mixed. So we're gonna start to kind of portion them out. I like to do the lamb first. I'll take like a little handful and then squeeze it in my fist and try and get it to come together into like a little bit of a football shape. And the colder that this lamb is when you're making these shapes, the better. If your hands make the lamb too warm, they'll start to get crumbly. I will often try and keep this tray refrigerated. For the rice shell, I like to use tools like an ice cream scoop to like portion things out. Kind of give it a nice little mound on the top. Scoop out onto the tray. Very even balls of rice shell. And we're gonna put all this in the refrigerator so that when we make everything, nothing starts to fall apart and crumble. Here's the part of the Kubbeh Halab that can be a little tricky and does take a little bit of practice. I like to have like a bowl of water. I really like to use gloves. They have like a non-stickiness to them, which is really nice. I'm right-handed, so what I'll do is I'll take the ball and put it in my left hand and use my right hand, and I'm smashing it, working it gently but firmly, spreading it out. And then I'll take the lamb, put it in the middle, and enclose the outside. And here's the tricky part. There's an air pocket in there. So I'm gonna try and like get that out as much as I can. And then what I'm gonna do is sort of make like prayer hands, compressing my hands together so I can get this nice oblong shape that's going on here. The more that I kind of work it, I can get it to kind of make a paste. If you're really feeling it, you can kind of like roll it in your hands like that, and then the whole thing is sealed on the outside. And I'm looking at all of them to make sure that there's no like very obvious holes. And if they are, I can just kind of smooth it over. If you have cracks in them and you go to fry them, what'll happen is like they can split. We're gonna fill this whole tray and then put it in the fridge, and then we'll fry them on the stove. For the last step, the Kubbeh Halab have been in the refrigerator for a little bit. We have canola oil at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't really want to go higher than that. They can get dark. I like to put them in a little basket and drop them in. And we don't want to crowd it too much. In this pot, like 5 is a good amount. And I'm like very gently making sure they don't stick to the bottom too much. You can stick it on your basket and descend it for a little bit and sort of like let it bounce. And that'll like allow it to not drop to the bottom of the pan. If it sticks to the bottom and you try and lift it, you're gonna like rip the whole thing apart. They're gonna get like a golden brown. I want the shell to feel like really crispy. Look at the color, the difference. Put them on this wire rack. Give it like a few minutes to cool down. To plate them, we have our raisin almond. It's like a romesco. I'll do a spoonful of the sauce on the edge of the plate. Our 2 most beautiful Kubbeh Halab. Place them right on top of the sauce. And this seems really weird. Dill. Very traditional herb, especially in like Persian cuisine. That's it. We made our Kubbeh. I eat these all the time, but they never cease to amaze me. There's so much stuff going on. So much fat layered in everywhere. You can taste all of it. The texture of it is incredible. Crunchy, creamy. And then the raisin almond sauce also brings all those flavors up so much. The combination of sweet and savory in here, that's so traditionally Middle Eastern. I don't know, man. It's an incredible little bite. For this recipe, click the link below or come and try it at Galit Restaurant in Chicago. They look very unassuming. You're like, oh, why did someone make hush puppies? But when you break in there, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I really, really love this dish.